Baobab Brilliance, Perspectives on Audacity, features Black women who are the embodiment of don't speak about it, be about it. Black women who write the vision and make it plain. I'm your host, Makiyah Moody. Let's get into it. Milan Ball, I am so glad that you said yes to this conversation on Baobab Brilliance, Perspectives on Audacity. How are you today?
I'm well, and I'm so glad to be joining you too.
Wonderful. So I usually like to start these conversations with the same intro and outro question. And so the intro question is, what word or phrase describes how you are coming to our energy exchange?
I am coming in today with just peace. That's my word. Um, just lots of peace and gratitude, but that's the main thing.
Awesome. I will take some of your peace. I'm just going to savor that for a moment. It has been a season of so much running around and hustling and just all the things that seem to be everywhere all at once. And so peace is just, it sounds delicious.
It is something to savor. I think I started out this year in that just chaotic, frantic space, and as time has gone on, I've just found that I actually have to force the peace in a way. I have to create the time and just focus on claiming it. Um, Otherwise, it's very easy to get swept up in everything else and not make the time to sit in the peace. Um, so that's where I'm at today.
Awesome. So we contain multitudes, and I've had the benefit of getting to know you a little bit over the last few months. Tell me about your multitudes. Tell our listeners who Milan Ball is.
So the simplest multitude I'll talk about first. So my career, I've done a lot of career pivoting. I started out in the fashion industry. I transitioned into technology, and now I am in philanthropy. And the work that I do now, I think there's a common thread throughout all of it. But that's when I think of the word multitudes, that's where I go first in my brain. It's just especially in the realm of audacity that we're talking about, I think it does take a lot of courage and audacity to just decide and trust that you can kind of go on a journey. And I feel like I've done that.
So you said fashion, tech, philanthropy, and I'm envisioning a leapfrog from each of those dimensions to the next one. What prompted some of those pivots? And was there any element of fear as you were thinking about making those changes?
I will start from the beginning. So I always say that my parents gave me and my siblings the childhood of their dreams. And one of those dreams was just being able to chase after whatever you wanted. We didn't have this pressure of, you have to become a doctor or a lawyer or this, go down this really lucrative path. And I was the oldest of four. So I was, the test kid. Got to kind of make mistakes and just chase. I got to chase my dreams, and fashion design was that dream. And I got into my dream school. And while I was there, the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York, right after my first semester of school, I felt like the world kind of came crashing down because my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and that just changed my reality a ton. I had the option. It was either I was going to be dropping out of school so I could go home and kind of help and take care of things. And I wouldn't be able to afford to keep going, or I had to really figure it out financially. And that time, my mom's doing better now. She's in remission. But at that time, I had experienced my first very serious generosity. My godfather stepped in to help me finish school, and I had to do all of the other heavy lifting with affording to live in New York City as a college student. And so I worked like 3 jobs to just get by while I was a full-time student, while I was taking the Amtrak back and forth from DC when my mom was having her treatment. So I had this forced hustle, and I accelerated through my career while I was in college. And I got the dream job that I wanted before I had even graduated school. And I realized once I got to that place that I don't actually really want to do it. I figured out really early that I had just checked all the boxes that I set for myself and I needed to restart. And so that is what I think forced the courageous spirit in me, nurtured the courageous spirit in me. And I think that, and then my parents and how they raised me and my siblings just to be fearless and to just, pursue the things that it is that we want. And so that was fashion. While I was working in the fashion space and after I had that job, that dream job, I went from working in a design office setting to becoming a buyer. And so I was the first buyer for this subscription box service, which those were really popular at the time. And I was the first, I was the junior buyer and I was the first person opening all the accounts for this company. And it was so thrilling and invigorating. And I had a wonderful mentor that helped me through that process. But while I was in that space, that subscription box service company, they were a fashion tech startup in a way. They were building an app as part of the experience. And so that was when I first got to see what it was like to build a tech product behind the scenes. And as I was building those accounts, I kept encountering founders of these social impact driven businesses and brands. And I was like, whoa, everyone needs to know about these companies. Why have I never heard of them before? And every time I would go back to my CEO and say, hey, we need to bring them into our house of brands, it was a no. And it was a no with good reason at sometimes, because, they do have tricky stipulations in the wholesale process. It's a little bit more expensive to work with some of those brands, but I became really passionate about finding good fits for them. And I didn't stay with that company, but I actually wound up consulting some of those businesses afterwards. And so I had maintained those relationships, and I got accepted into this accelerator program where I was able to build and launch my own app. And I essentially built a platform called Philan where people could find brands that aligned with their values. And so that jump from fashion to tech was me just experimenting, trying to create something where people could find brands the way that I was finding them. And that was the inception of the platform Philan. So that's what I called it. And while I was in that journey, I was like, wow, there's so much I need to learn about this space. I was applying to B schools. I was not doing well with my GMAT situation. I had the dream B school I wanted to go to. They were like, respectfully, I don't think you can get in with this test score. And I had to pivot. And my mom was a travel nurse in Indianapolis around the same time. And I went to visit her and I saw an advertisement for the Lilly School of Philanthropy. And I thought, well, I was going to pursue an MBA down a social impact track. Maybe I should explore some alternatives to that. And philanthropy was one of the things that called to me. And I am so glad that I did that. While I was at the Lilly School, took advantage of all the things that they offer, part of those being fundraising school courses. And I had already raised money in that startup that I had created with that tech platform. And so I kind of knew what I was doing, but I definitely did not know the full scope in a generosity driven giving scenario. And so I fell in love with it. I always loved building relationships with people. I always had a passion for connecting values and purpose to generosity. And fundraising for me in that environment was, oh, I can do this. And I had never thought about it as the actual career path trajectory that I would go on. And so that is my long-winded journey. And I credit so much of where I'm at now with the care and what it is that I got from the Lilly School, because I was championed there. I was given a scholarship to attend, so I had a full ride for a master's program, which is not common.
Nice.
I had so much support. So it was fantastic. And I was working full time in part of that program for an organization in Indianapolis that was focused on wealth building in communities of color. And so I not only got more acquainted with the city of Indy, and I'm still here, and I just kept progressing. And now I'm working at Giving Compass, and I'm loving it. It is as any fundraising job, it's challenging, but I'm working with some of the best people, and yeah, that's my those are my multitudes going from fashion to philanthropy.
No, you are definitely a multi-hyphenate. That's what I was thinking as you were sharing the different leaps from fashion to technology to launching your own tech platform. Because I feel like being a founder of something takes a certain like mental toughness, mindset, focus, discipline, like all the things. And so it's great to hear about these different stages you've been in. And now that you have landed in philanthropy and are loving it, and got such great support from Lilly School is amazing. So I think I am wondering, you said that you were coming into this conversation and your word was peace. I often think that peace and joy go together. Can you tell us a little bit about the practices you use to incite joy in your life?
Yes. So I laugh because my friends think I'm a little nuts because so when it comes to joy, I know myself very well, and I spent a lot of time trying to get to know myself. Even I'm sitting with you now, and there's no visual, but in front of me, I have a love list. And a few years ago, I created this list of all of the things that I love to do and love, just as a reminder, so that whenever I am feeling low or I'm lacking joy, I can just pick something off of that list. And it's just readily available, and they're simple things. So I can actually pull a few things off my love list. So time with Bean, who is my golden doodle that's passed out on the floor right now. Um, I I always feel better when I'm playing with my dog or spending time with my dog. A clean space, which is something that's very simple, but it's just, I know that I feel better when I'm in a clear space. Beauty and self-care. I love just getting my sacred products out, getting a good hair wash day in. And these are all really small things, but I have the best day when some of these things in this love list are taking place. I mentioned my friends earlier because they joke I have a hydroponic planter that I got at the start of this year because I wanted something. I wanted something that I knew every day I could look forward to. And having something that's like growing around me and something that I'm taking care of and nurturing just allows for that. And that was a way for me to literally and metaphorically just plant something joyful into my days. So those are just a few of the things that help me.
Awesome. So the name of this series is Baobab Brilliance, Perspectives on Audacity. And the baobab is this phenomenal tree, sometimes called the tree of life, that's resistant to fire and is really nourishing to the ecosystem that it occupies. And I often think of nature with like metaphors. And so this baobab tree makes me think of Black women, given our power, our resilience, our tenacity, all of the good things. I'm wondering what wisdom comes to you from nature or from Mother Earth, given that you have your hydroponic plant that you are tending to with such care.
Well, I have to start with that I've never had a green thumb. And so the fact that I can actually grow something and it's still alive, and there's an app that helps me with that. But just, I mean, I guess when it comes to nature in its true form and, stepping outside and being with the earth, I think of, in the context of Black women, I think of beauty first. Just and beauty and not just, floral and fauna, but just like clean air and taking deep breaths and being present when you're outdoors. And I think any of the spaces where I'm surrounded by my friends or even just leaders or people that I look up to, it feels like a breath of fresh air. And so that's probably the first thing that I go to, that safety of being in just a pure space and comfort and release. Because I think I was just with my girlfriends, just hanging out with friends the other night, and it's just being able, I know that part of the peace I'm sitting with today is because of just being able to take a deep breath around, safe company.
Awesome. Uh, I wonder, so you shared earlier on about all of your multitudes and the different stages of your career, as well as some of the things that bring you joy from your love list. Do you think that your identity as a Black woman shapes your leadership style or not? Or like a yes and maybe sorta? I've been thinking a lot about identity and all the dimensions of identity. As a Black woman who grew up in New Hampshire and went to predominantly white schools, I feel like some of my, I'm not even sure what the word is. Some of my like figuring out like who I am in all of my multitudes has been an ongoing process just based on some of the communities I've been a part of in New Orleans and Chicago and then growing up here in southern New Hampshire. And so I often try to think about how my identity, if at all, is like impacting like how I'm moving in the world or if it's something else. And so I'm just curious if you think about your identity as a Black woman putting fingerprints on anything that you're doing or if it's just kind of an element.
Ooh, I think it is the yes, no, and that you mentioned. And I also, I grew up in a similar space where we were never just in one space, and so I have lived in like 6 different states in my upbringing. And the most time I spent was in Northern Virginia, right outside of DC. Outside of that, we lived in Pennsylvania for some of the formative years, which was a fairly predominantly white space. And I was one of like 3 Black girls in my school class of like less than 100. So when I think of just the formative influences and the fingerprints, I think I reflect more on just when I'm meeting people that maybe haven't had exposure to different groups of people. I think that's when I feel it the most, when I'm the, one of the first representatives of, a Black woman for people. And I don't think I even really fully appreciated or recognized that I would be in that position until moving to Indianapolis, which is a very diverse city, but it was the first time I was encountering a lot of people who maybe did not have a lot of Black friends in just a different context. I lived in New York for 6 years, so New York's an incredibly diverse place, and I loved it. And I lived abroad. I studied abroad, and then I worked there. And I was the first American that my friends were meeting in a lot of contexts. So that was a different thing. The first Black American that they were meeting. So I think when I'm looking back on all those experiences, and I know the fingerprints are there. I guess it's in those just one-to-one encounters with folks. It depends on who it is I'm engaging with, where I really feel it, and have to be cognizant of it when I'm showing up to those conversations. What else would I say? I think in the context of the no, so that's the yes, the yes and then in the context of the no, I feel really lucky and fortunate that I have worked for a number of very strong Black women. And so I've seen different archetypes represented in those spaces. And so in ways, I think it challenges me when I think of my own leadership and approach to leadership to maybe fill in some of the gaps that I saw as working for a strong Black woman, and just being mindful that there's always going to be these nuances and experiences. There were times where I felt incredibly supported by my superior, and there were times that I didn't. And it almost felt more painful because of this expectation that, well, we're similar and I should feel supported by you. And instead, it was more of a competitive environment where I wasn't challenged to succeed. And I've had supervisors that and leaders that are not Black women. We're not Black women. We're white men or white women or Asian women, and they were phenomenal. And so I feel that it's kind of where the no comes in, that it just depends. And I think that the more we lean into the nuances of all these experiences, the better we can kind of fill in the gaps and kind of help people, I think, also along their healing journey. Like, there are young women that I mentor that have been in similar positions as me, and I just hope that I take on the more positive archetype.
Mm.
And give them confidence that they don't have to put up a wall with everyone. Like, I hope that there's a sense of freedom in their experiences navigating these spaces one day, where they don't have to be fearful that they're going to confront, the microaggressions, but also mindful that they might still happen. So I don't know what the balance is with that, but I think I also recognize, like, I'm entering a position of leadership at a time where these shifts are happening at a larger scale. And people are talking about it, and I see a lot more women, Black women, that are, have made the space to be as comfortable as it is now. So or at least that's what I can speak from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your yes, no, and just makes me think of the fluidity of it. And hearing you share your examples, I was nodding because right after graduate school, when I was in Chicago, I worked at an education nonprofit, and it was a small team, and on this team of maybe 6 or 7, there were 2 Black women. And then me, who was kind of like fresh out of grad school and was like ready to take on the world. And one of them was a very nurturing, affirming, almost like had auntie vibes, and was just like, no, Makiyah, here's what you should be thinking through, like super supportive. Brenda Bell, incredible. And then there was another person who seemed so critical and harsh that it was even though obviously we contain multitudes, we aren't monolithic, all that jazz, but it was a very stark contrast between, I think, their demeanors and dispositions in helping me to like find my way and, just develop as a young professional. And so I can totally see the examples you were giving. I was like, yeah, that tracks. Like, been there. Similarly speaking, also had phenomenal mentors that have been, white men that have been super helpful in helping me interrogate different situations and providing me, invitations and door openings that then have like changed the course of my life. And so it seems so complex and textured to me, but I always love asking the question because I think our identities are just one facet of who we are, yet they take up a lot of space, or they can. And so thanks for sharing, I guess, the depth of your experiences so far.
Well, thanks for asking.
You bet. Actually, have you finished your book yet? You were reading a book last time we talked.
I did finish it. So I'm looking back. I forgot. There's no videos. You can't see. Yes. Yeah. Hold on. I'll grab it just for the moment we're having.
Yeah. Unrig the Game: What Women of Color Can Teach Everyone About Winning by Vanessa Priya Daniel. I started mine 2 weeks ago.
It is so good. So I did finish it, and I actually just shipped a copy to one of my friends that works in movement. And she was so excited about that. And then I just started Holly's book, The Big We. So
Wonderful.
I got that's my next one. And they sit so pretty next to each other on the shelf. So
shout out to Holly Lee and Vanessa Priya Daniel for the book gems.
I was talking about the breath of fresh air. This book that's the feeling that I had in a few different chapters, especially the chapter on modern feminist movement. That one I think it's later on in the book, but let me know when you get to
No,
it.
no, no. You can totally give a spoiler because it'll entice me to keep on reading when I want to just be like laying on the couch and taking a nap. It'll be like, no, Milan said if I get to this chapter. So I am curious, even if it's not that chapter, is there something like what would you say is maybe like a highlight or a resonating a resonating insight from what you read in Vanessa's book?
Well, admittedly, I have drawn and underlined and highlighted all throughout. So the chapter is called Feminism's Problem with Power. And I literally wrote at the very top of it, this chapter is everything. um, but so there, I'll read this one piece that I underlined because I thought it was so good. So she's quoting throughout the book, she's quoting different movement leaders and sharing their stories. And in this one, just talking about being well liked. And it said, "You're probably not going to like me. Whoever you thought I was, that's not who my job requires me to be. When you establish boundaries and expectations around deliverables, you'll get a different response. Demanding respect rather than likes helps you avoid the tentacles of manipulation." And then Mona Sinha, who is this is another quote, she said, I'm not motivated by being liked by all people. It's not about likability and all about respect. Sometimes women compromise their standards to be liked. That's a dangerous position to be in and a slippery slope because then those people know they can manipulate you. The key fundamentals are do your homework, execute with excellence, listen respectfully, and show up authentically. That establishes your credo, and despite themselves, the same people will respect you not for your likability, but for what you show up for. That's different.
Mm. See? Now I know I'm going to not take a nap. Instead, I'm going to get my little blanket and turn some pages.
I wrote this at the very end of it when I finished the book. I said, this chapter may have changed my life, like on the bottom and dated it. So I have to, if I meet Vanessa, I have to thank her for that because there were like tears as I was reading it. It's such a good book.
Well, I will be sure to send this episode to Vanessa Priya Daniel.
Please do.
So that she can know that your life has been changed by her words and her beautiful book. I am so excited to work my way through it. It does sound like a balm.
It is. And, yeah, it's freeing in ways. So
awesome. I love it. All right. Well, if I had some sage or incense or candle, I feel like I would light it right now as our conversation comes to an end. But I'm wondering, now that we have been able to share space and time with each other, what word or phrase describes how you are leaving our energy exchange?
Well, on that note of the quote, just uplifted. That's the word I'll use. Feeling uplifted. Starting with peace and feeling uplifted. I'm having a great day.
I love it. And I love that for you. I love it for me. I am so glad that the Impact Driven Philanthropy Collaborative brought us into each other's orbits because I think we're going to be connected for a while. We've got some things to do, some things to create, some glitter to sprinkle.
Yeah, and then just seeing everything everyone's working on has been so fun. So I'm just so glad to be a part of it.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you for joining me for this episode of Baobab Brilliance. I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the week.
Thank you, Makiyah. You too.